my presentation's a little bit different than most of them here, in that it's not so much this is what we did and this is what we learned. It's more about gathering feedback from our university to try to figure out what our services should be, what our shape should be, what goals should be. And so some of the things that I'm gonna talk about, or that you choose for me to talk about, might be relevant to your institution. Some may not be. Some may be if it's an American institution. And so some things may be relevant, some things may not be relevant, but either way, I hope the process about gathering this type of data, I think will be relevant for you. So, as I struggle with my Face ID, okay, there we go. Slight context, I should have used a gopher now, I realize. University of Minnesota has about 56,000 students. Has about 5,000 faculty. It is about top 20 among North American universities for scientific impact according to the CWTS Open Rankings. And it has $1 billion in yearly research expenditures and about 17 colleges and schools. Don't take that poll just quite yet. So let me go back a slide. So other context of study, what I did is I went around and I interviewed 11 different, focusing mainly on associate deans of research, but also talking to different administrators about their RIM goals and desires. And so I wasn't specifically talking to them about Pure. I wasn't asking them questions about Pure, but we have been a Pure institution for a number of years, so in many cases, that influenced their response. And I got mostly associate deans, and so it was a semi-structured approach. And the reason why I take this type of approach is I want it to be exploratory in nature. I don't want to come set with certain expectations or certain things. I want to have very broad questions, see how they're going to respond, what interests them, and let them drive that conversation, and me just kind of adding central little follow-up questions to it. And as I was saying, even if some of the things I talk about might not be relevant to your institution, I think another thing that it can do is help really build relationships with your different university administrators. I spoke to 11 different schools, and after that, projects developed among 8 of those different schools after talking to them and working with them and hearing from them. So besides just learning, it's a great way to build those types of connections and build those relationships going forward. So the questions, the 3 questions I'm going to talk about today and the answers is, in an ideal world, with a snap of your fingers, what information would you like to see about your research information, research life cycle? And so I asked that, I asked what would they like to do with it, and I asked what challenges they've seen. And so that's kind of the loose structure of this study. Now, I have a number of different takeaways, a number of different thoughts after doing those interviews, but I didn't want to be just me going through them. I wanted to respond to what is most interesting and most relevant, most curious to you. So ranking is university rankings and different related research reflections, whether it's about making connections, to what extent was the conversation about journal articles, student researchers, whether there's how much barriers people encountered, Pure by itself as a tool, and different success and support for faculty. So these are some of the different thoughts that I had after interviewing these people. And so is the poll active now in your app? So can you guys go ahead and respond to what's the most interesting to you? And then based upon that, we will cover them in order as we have time. And do I need to go to the next slide to see the results? I'm going to say yes.
Go to the actual, so I think you can go to the actual slide there and make the poll start.
Oh. It started?
Is everyone able to, is it starting?
Okay. How do I see the results?
Oh,
Oh, you have them? Okay.
They'll show it.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay. Oh, so very. Okay, so, it's updating. 35 people, that seems like a pretty good representative. Very diverse, okay. We will talk about success and support first, and then making connections next, and see if we have time to address other ones. So, success and support of faculty. So a common theme that came up was thinking about ways that the administrators wanted to know how they could support faculty best. They wanted to know which faculty were exceeding expectations, which faculty were underperforming. And in a lot of cases, this was not data points that they felt they easily had at their fingertips. And specifically in this context, we're talking about research and what those things were, but it wasn't as easy to access as they would have liked. So there was a really good interest in essentially what some of the administrators called like big deals, right? If someone comes out with a really large grant, if someone has a press release for a major funding organization, if someone has an article that is really being cited a lot, they said that they did not have a way to know about that type of content. And so something to help them know about the thing quickly and easily was something that they were interested in. And so that was one way they wanted to support success. And there was a great interest in using that to then write those faculty a congratulation note, to acknowledge the successes that they've had and encourage them more and to engage in a type of conversation. So it was kind of one of the goals and desires that came up with this question or a theme that I noticed. Another dean said, and getting back to that level of awareness, he was talking about some grants that their college sponsored, and it was 15 grants and 15 reports that he was supposed to get about those grants. Anybody want to guess how many reports that dean got? None! Yes, you're correct. And so he's just wanting to know, like, who's acknowledging the papers that are coming out of this research, who's being acknowledged in the research outputs, which grants are being acknowledged. And so just indicating a lack of awareness that they were really wanting to know. And so there was wanting to, that awareness, the faculty publications, or big deals, as some of the administrators called it, their own terminology, but there's also wanting to see which faculty are struggling, and not necessarily to provide negative responses to those that maybe aren't meeting particular things that they're trying to accomplish, but as an indication that maybe they need some extra support. That if they are not publishing what is expected of them, so they can reach out and provide that extra support to them, and they did not feel like they had a good sense of those high-performing or underperforming faculty, so they could guide those types of additional support, either positive, to help them do more, or kind of see what's going on so they can provide additional content. And there was also a desire to identify the research strengths and clusters that essentially they were not aware of. Generally, the administrators were, if it was in their particular field, they were pretty well aware of it at the college, and they were a bit aware of it if they came from a specific department. But it seems like very much one level down, that they didn't have a great sense of all the different research being done in the area, and they wanted to know about different strengths in that area that were coming up that they basically have the greatest insight into. 5 minutes left. Okay, so the other topic that was particularly interesting, making connections. So previously in my past position, I was expecting a lot of interest in essentially just kind of like the details, the outputs, numbers, citations, metrics, all things I was coming expecting in the conversation. But there was a very high interest in using this tool, research data, to help their faculty make connections with each other. So it was a very strong desire among 5 of the 11 areas. This came up by themselves organically as part of the conversation, and another 3 came up at a lesser degree. And everybody I spoke to had used Pure, the public portal of Pure, to help try to make those connections. And there were, I think, a range of people responding that it was very positive, some responding that it was a very negative experience for them, and kind of the range in between. But they had all tried to use that public type of portal to make those types of connections. Some of the positive things that they had found is when they were trying to find research techniques, they were using Portal to make those types of connections around techniques, around what were the study participants in this particular case. So they're looking for people that had used cows as their study participants to make those types of connections. The negative feedback was a little bit more about the keyword searches and coming up with what they called strange results. That maybe they were just getting the exact keyword they were searching for, but if the research was a bit more narrower than what they were looking for, they weren't finding those types of connections within Pure. As someone said, I get a list of people who have publications that match my keywords, but it rarely actually gets me to people who are at the right people. It misses people who are using more narrow, more specific terms in the field. And something else that was also brought up, and how am I okay on time? But, very much, if you're looking for people to make connections with, you want to know their availability. Are they having so many grants out now that they don't want to even talk to you? Are they interested in a conversation? Or are they actively looking for grants? And it wasn't so much a critique of Pure. It was more like, this is something that we need. We need to know the level of interest among our faculty to help these make connections. Whether people are reaching out to us from industry, reaching out from us from donors, or other faculty to try to make those connections, there needs to be some way to indicate how receptive an individual is to research. And so one college was actually creating their own internal survey just to kind of get feedback from faculty. But if there's some way that we could take that goal and integrate it into a system that's designed to see those types of connections, I think it would be very beneficial for our faculty. And so we are just about out of time. I'm not going to move on to one of the other potential topics, but I will open up to questions about anything that I displayed previously or something not displayed there, free-formed, whatever is most interesting to you.
Thank you, Andy, very much. All right, questions?
Hello, my name's Mariah. I'm also from America, so hello. But I'm living in Ireland now. I was wondering, the research you've done sounds absolutely incredible, and I was wondering if you have a public-facing area where people could read more about the research you did and the different results.
Not yet. I plan to do that in the future, but not yet.
All right, other questions?
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. My question also concerns the research itself that you did. Maybe you mentioned it and I missed it, but did you get additional funding to do it, or was that within your role in the administration?
It was just within my role within our institution. My official title is as a librarian. I'm in that category, and at our institution, our librarians are expected to, for the most part, do research, and so it's given time to do that research as well. And so it wasn't funded. I didn't actually need additional money, but my institution did give me that time to explore that research.
That's amazing. Maybe you can tell my boss as well.
Well, I think the thing is when you're talking about RIM or you're talking about your Pure portal, you want to talk and make sure that you understand your users' needs. Now, you could define the users differently than I did. Maybe it's faculty, maybe it's not administrators, but understanding what they want is a key to making sure that your product is successful at the institution.
One last question.
So I was wondering of these, which one did come up the most, and were you surprised by what was the focus?
Sure. So I think the thing that came up the most is really just that desire to understand the different research outputs and the metrics associated with their faculty's works. Something also that came up most is, under the challenges question, is just different ways that they could reduce the barriers, whether it's around more automation, whether it's around training, whether it's around not understanding a specific aspect of Pure.
So barriers to using the RIM system?
barriers to not just pure, but to getting what they want. And so I think, I was talking to some people, they don't just want necessarily the publication data. They don't want the funding data. They want the funding data, the publication data. They want all that particular data that is relevant to these types of questions in a single location, automated, running smoothly, great data quality, and all things that I think we should strive for. And that's the type of thing that they were sort of interested in. But those types of barriers came up in conversation off as well.
More food for thought. Thank you, Andy. Let's thank our speaker, and we're ready to wrap to lunch.